Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in today. I'm Nicole Forbes with Dennis's 7Ds, and today it is just a few days before the first day of spring, and it's time to start evaluating kind of our containers. I've got these containers at my front door. They've looked great through the winter, but now they're starting to look a little, I don't know, I'm tired of them. They're a little bit tired. So we're going to refresh a tired container today. There are lots of reasons why you would redo a container planting. And it depends again on whether we're looking at, in today's example, a combination planter. So we have several different elements that are all grouped together into one planting. And, I've got like a winter dormant grass here. A couple of the plants just have struggled through the cold weather. So now that it is almost spring and new plants are showing up at the garden center that, are enticing and more bloomy for the season, I'm just ready. I'm ready for change. That's one reason why you would redo a container. And so again, when there's nothing exactly wrong with the plants themselves, we can repot them, repurpose them, or in many cases like this grass, plant it out in the garden and watch it thrive as a perennial that just gets bigger and better every year. If you have a planting of a single specimen, for example, a potted tree, a topiary, a lemon, whatever it may be, whatever it is that lives in a container rather than in the ground, the best way to maintain the health and kind of vitality of a container or potted plant is to refresh the soil itself about every 4 years. So now you'll all see there's a handout that's attached to the top of this video. It's right under the description of the video or title of the video. Hyperlink that and you'll go to a handout that gives you step-by-step both, how to do this and some of the other reasons why we would do this. But you'll see like a potted plant that's been a container for several years will slowly drop its level in the pot itself. So you'll see like the soil get lower and lower to where you can maybe have 3 or 4 inches space between the top of the container and where the soil line begins. And that is a perfect demonstration of the actual decomposition and compaction of the soil. And as it smooshes down into the pot, it gets harder and harder for water and roots to penetrate and be absorbed into that soil. And so at that point is a good time to consider redoing the container to exchange old soil for new soil. So even if it's just one plant in a pot, about every, we say 3 to 5 years, depending on how fast the plant grows or how tight the pot is, or how crummy your potting soil is maybe. So about every 3 to 5 years, late winter or early spring, while plants are still like small and on the dormant side or still mostly dormant, is the best time to do this kind of procedure. The container that I have today still has a lot of elements that are healthy and happy and look good, and we may or may not put them back into the new container arrangement that I've picked out. And you'll see behind me here that I've kind of assembled the plants that I'm hoping to put back into this pot with a little bit of a new theme, but kind of keeping the same color tones. And I'll be able to, like I said, use some of the plants that are still in here. But one, the Senecio Angel's Wings, which I'll talk about in a minute, just didn't do great. maybe in the last cold that we had or something. So it is borderline hardy. And even though it was in a protected space, well, we'll take a look at it as I dig it out of the pot. It's not looking great. Will probably come back. It's not dead. So we can cut it back and maybe pot it in another container to give it space and time to revive itself. But these containers are too front and center. They're too highly visible to allow, you know, some of this stuff to just look so tired and dormant. If you're using, if you're redoing a larger pot, now this is a pretty tall container. It's, well, I would say 2.5 feet tall at least, but I don't have anything too big in it. So it's going to be easy for me to extract the material from this container while still keeping it upright. But if you have a large potted plant, big container and a big plant in it, do not try to hoist it out of the pot vertically. Not only is that really rough on the stalk, the stem, the roots of the plant itself, but that's just not a good lift for you either. So if you have something larger or taller, it's wise to lay out a tarp, lay out some protective towels or cardboard, and work with either, small, cautious movements if you're by yourself, or use some help if you've got a helper. Lay the pot down on its side and then just pull the material out of it horizontally, and it'll be much easier to both get the dirt out without scooping, and to get the plant material out themselves. Speaking of getting the plant material out easily, this is the best tool ever. This is my personal Hori Hori knife. It is one of kind of the staples in a professional gardener's toolkit for sure. And this is it. It's my pruners here on my hip, my Hori Hori knife. With these two tools, I can do an awful lot. This acts like a spatula at this point. So it's gonna kind of go in between the sides of the container and the dirt and really start to just loosen up the soil so that I can get into extract the individual plants inside this container. And so then I've got a serrated edge also on this blade. It's like 6 inches and has a nice, give you a pretty close up because it's so pretty, has a nice 6-inch measurement on it, so it can also tell spacing between, if I was planting and considering how far the plants are from each other, then this would help me in that sense as well. All right, we got approval on our combination. Would you change anything, Karen? Karen is our master container designer. We just got thumbs up from Karen, so very exciting on that. We don't want to, go rogue on creations. But Hori Hori, as I mentioned, not only is it, I always say it's like personal protection if you're gardening in rough neighborhoods, or just, have people bothering you while you're gardening. But it also is a great tool for dividing plants, kind of just digging out little roots. Great for planting in general. It gives you that spacing in there. I mean, it's awesome. So you're looking for like a Mother's Day gift or just a like St. Patrick's Day gift, first day of spring gift. Give the gardener in your life a Hori Hori knife or buy one for yourself because you deserve it. So I've already done one big loosening of the sides of the container, but just to kind of give you an idea of how we go about that. So I'm going to sort of, because I'm not yet sure which plants I want to keep or which plants I want to trash, I've got several buckets ready to just both catch debris and garbage, but I could, just put some plants in here until I figure out whether I want to replant them or if I just need to plant them elsewhere or put them in other pots. So I lift up the plant material kind of around the edge of the container and then use my knife, my Hori Hori, to just, it's like getting brownies out, just loosen around the edge here. And the first one that we're gonna try to extract is our angel's wings. So now it's a nice big fulcrum and it helps me start to pop it right out of the container. So it's coming out this nice root ball, and we can just pull it out by itself. So now Senecio Angel's Wings. Here it is, looking fine, looking its finest, fresh and perky, but it is a zone 8, 9. What does the tag say? Well, it calls itself an annual, so that goes to show you. We put an annual through winter, and this is what it looks like. So it was a little bit protected, but we can see, well, that's a broken piece. It's got decent roots, so it's not dead down there, which means that it's going to be worth repotting. We have some nice new growth coming here, and all it needs is a little bit of cleanup. Nice new growth around the base. Clean this up, put it in another container, and like I said, give it a chance to rest and recover, and it's going to come back and look great, but just not front and center in the container today. So we'll take this Angel's Wings, and we're just going to set her back here for now because I'm going to put it in another container a little bit later. Now, some of these other items are easier to extract because they're small. I have some heathers, heathers that we planted in there this fall. And they're, again, cute, perennial, evergreen. They were blooming at the time. A little bit of cleanup, and then we'll just put these out in the garden. I've got a great spot to put these, so we'll tuck them into a bucket. Let's see, there's only one heather. Now, I've got kind of a clear path to get this grass out. This is Miscanthus Morning Light. It is an awesome perennial grass, but it is winter dormant. And it's just starting to begin putting out a little bit of green growth for spring, like half an inch of started shoots that are down here towards the base. So leaving the top up at least gives us something interesting in the container. I mean, it gave us presence instead of where you see a lot of people really cut their grasses down to nothing for winter. But now that I've got it out of the pot, I'm moving it into another spot, keeping the top easy to maneuver. And then once I've got it replanted, I would go ahead and cut this back to just about 3-4 inches above the ground. And that's going to let all of the new foliage come out this year. So another perfect one to put out into the garden, or we could repot it into another container. But really, grasses don't wake up very quickly in the spring. So a lot of other things are kind of coming up and looking good. An ornamental grass is still gonna look a little bit bare and brown for another month or 6 weeks or so. So I'm not gonna have that in my pot. Now, of course, we have a couple of pansies. Those are the obvious guys in here, but towards the back I have this beautiful lavender that's looking pretty nice. And I've got another ground cover here, so let's get this pansy out. Now, believe it or not, this, you know when you buy pansies, right? They're like in a little 4-inch pot, and you think, oh, well, it looks pretty small. So this is one of the trailing pansies. It's a Cool Wave is the series. And this guy's got roots. He's really got roots. But look at what one pansy probably potted in, what do you say, Karen? October? Oh, dirt on my face. I think they were earlier. September?
I'd say September.
Okay, yeah, so we probably planted them in September. This was a 4-inch pot in September, maybe a quart, and look at it now. So she needs a little bit of deadheading, but what a sassy, big, full plant with still a lot of flowers left on it. Pansies, remember, they like it cool. So we still have some cool weather ahead of us. If I can fit this back into the container, I may put the pansy back in. But again, sometimes you're just ready for change. That means that the pansy could go out into the garden somewhere, into another pot if you wanted, because they will still really look good for a long time. Karen says pansies, nope, time for change. time for change. And we all, you know, change is hard sometimes, especially when you have perfectly good looking plants. But the next season is coming, right? So we know pansies like it cool, and we're headed into a warmer season. So ultimately, we will be changing them out. If you do it with a little bit of ahead time, you give your plants a chance to kind of grow and fill in so that they are a little bit more ready, full and fluffed, I guess you would say, by the time they're blooming. So I've got even a, like, I don't know, here's a little tiny seedling of pansy. We'll just put that in our debris can. I'm gonna get this. Looks like there's 3 pansies in here. I thought maybe there were only 2, but I'll get this guy out. Again, massive. Look at that. Pretty big root ball too, from a 4-inch or a quart size. Happy little plant, so we'll set her aside. Let's see what we can do. Now I can get this lavender out. Now see, pulling, it's kind of still attached in there. So instead of pulling where we're gonna sever some roots, I'm gonna use my hori, loosen the sides, and then kind of use the leverage from the edge of the pot. Now I'm pushing the root ball up, which is a lot better than pulling on the plant itself. So most of the support is still from below where I'm holding the roots. Now we don't need all of the soil that's attached to this one. And I may put this one back because it does kind of go with our color palette. If I trim it up some, it could go right back into the container. So we'll get a little bit of that dirt off and set it aside. Now we're almost empty. One more pansy. Okay, get you down in there. And then the last plant that's in here looks really good. So we're gonna definitely use it in the rest of our container planting. So this is Ceanothus Diamond Heights. This is a ground cover or trailing style of Ceanothus. It's just budded up now. How exciting. It's gonna have these like electric blue flowers. So we've got the buds here at the tips of the stems, but really it's grown more as a foliage plant. So just kind of gracefully drifting over the edge of the container gives us just kind of a softened edge, and it's evergreen, although again, a little bit tender, so it's best if it's protected, which is where it's been, and it looks great. So this guy's definitely gonna get put back into our container planting. Now, even though I've removed all of the plants from the container, I still have quite a bit of soil in this pot, but like I said, this is a big pot. So we don't have to remove all of the soil, but I'd like to remove a fair amount. So probably should have, thought about that ahead of time, because I'm gonna be shoveling soil for a few minutes or whatever, a minute. But behind me, I have more plants that I want to introduce into this container. And it's the kind of standard combo that we're, not standard plant combo, but the assembly, the concept of what we often talk about or teach in container planting combinations. And that is thriller, filler, spiller. And, it's probably also getting a little old or tired if you've heard those terms before, but it gives us a visual or kind of a verbal description of the visual that we're trying to maintain or trying to create. If you have a center plant that's considered the thriller, it goes upright and usually either narrow at the base or just narrow in general. So the upright growing plant can stay out of the way of kind of a lower level of foliage and plant material. that's where the filler lives. So the filler lives in the lower level, underneath kind of the thriller. Fillers can be foliage or flowers, usually a combination of that. And you have multiple fillers, throwing dirt. Spillers, exactly as they sound, are that trailing element that goes at the edge of the container and trails over or spills over the edge to soften kind of the overall look and, again, add dimension. You can put in trailing plants in a container because they also will go their own direction. So they get out of the way of the fillers and the thriller. I've got some stuff. Oh, maybe bulbs down here? I don't really know what's in here. Probably. The soil itself looks pretty good because it was probably put in when we potted this up in the fall. So I'm going to keep the bottom layer of potting soil. I need to take 1 or 2 more scoops out so that I can fit in my new thriller. Now I've got a cheat here. So behind me is my new thriller. This is Blue Angel White Pine. This is Pinus parviflora. It's Japanese white pine. I love it. It's got kind of space between the branches so that it's not really heavy or chunky as far as a conifer goes. It's a little bit airier and lighter. It has this silver blue color to the foliage, which will accent the kind of light aqua or turquoise color of the pot that I have. And then, because I'm so nerdy in my mind, I also love the angel's wings planted with the blue angel pine. So in my mind, it's going to be the angel pot, which is totally stupid, but that's sometimes just how I entertain myself. So we have taken Blue Angel out of her 5-gallon container right now. So I have this 5-gallon pot, and I have taken a lot of dirt out of this container, but I want to make sure that I've taken enough out of the container so I can use this empty pot to sort of gauge whether or not I still need to dig out a little bit more to have space to plant my Blue Angel. And yes, I do need to dig out a little bit more. So we're just going to take it from the bottom here and move it around the edges because we don't need the soil to be so high around the edges. However, because of the way that this pot is sitting, where it's going to sit is going to sit up against a wall or a column, basically. So when you do thriller, filler, spiller, you still have a couple of decisions to make, right? So how many plants, whether you repeat, if you're symmetrical. In this case, the thriller is not going to go right in the center of the round pot. Because this container sits back against a wall or a pillar, we're going to only really view it from the front. So I'm going to take the thriller and plant it center back instead of truly middle. And that's going to give me a larger space to plant in front of the thriller, but not necessarily anything behind it. Now, I hope that makes sense, but you'll see what I mean here in just a minute. So, a little bit more leveling under here so I can get it back here, and I think that's about perfect. So we've chosen, as I mentioned, the centerpiece or the thriller as something that is, it's beautiful right now, but it is also evergreen, which means that I can keep this thriller through the rest of the season on into the winter, which is a little bit different from the grass that I just pulled out. That grass is winter dormant. So it looks great in the fall, but once it really turned brown, it wasn't very exciting. So Blue Angel will continue to look great through the season. It's also slow growing, and being slow growing means that we'll be able to keep it the kind of appropriate size for the container for several years. And pines themselves are fairly easy to prune or to maintain smaller by candling the new growth in the spring as well. So that gives us a lot of leeway and ways to play with the Blue Angel pine in our pot. It has a little stake right now to keep it growing sturdy and straight. And I'm going to keep the stake in at the moment, just because, again, I want the plant to grow straight. Now, 5-gallon pot, and the root ball is just a little bit, formed to the container it was in. So once again, my Hori Hori gives me the ability to loosen the roots just a little bit. Turn her in. Just get her ready for planting. There's a slug on the roots. Bye-bye, slug. And we don't have to do a ton of root loosening. I can see all kinds of nice new growth, but I don't want it to be really compacted in there either. Okay. I'm gonna set her down in there. Looks like we're getting a visit from Spruce. Okay, so here we have, as I'm putting the plant back in the container, we want to kind of gauge the level where the top of the soil ends up. We don't want it to be 4 inches down, but we don't want it to be like right at the edge of the container either. So I'm like 2 fingers, is probably the best. So that's maybe an inch or so below the lip of the pot. That allows us to, stand there with the hose or watering can, water the container, let it fill even with a little bit of water, and then soak in or absorb instead of draining out and over the top. So that is, that's kind of where you stop on the soil line. And now that I've gotten our little Blue Angel in, I'm going to put a scoop of our fertilizer in here, because we want to both give some nutrition to the Blue Angel as well as prepare the rest of the plants to be able to thrive in this planting for the season. So we use kind of a combination fertilizer, which is an all-purpose GMB, like Paradise Blend 555. It has the probiotics of mycorrhizae and beneficial bacteria in it. But then we blend it with the Portland Rose Society 15-10-10 synthetic fertilizer. And that's going to be faster acting and has just a little bit more phosphorus and nitrogen to kind of kick the plants into growth. So we look at it as kind of a both the long-term, more holistic nutrition of the probiotics, and then a little like kick of coffee or energy bar or whatever for the flowers. So adding that fertilizer in, kind of at that lower level. Now again, I can just level out the soil and get our old soil out of the way, and now bring in new, fresh soil. And that, I have a nice 2 cubic foot bag of GMB all-purpose potting soil. Potting soil is one of those, people don't really understand potting soil. So a couple of things quickly about potting soil. First of all, as I've maybe mentioned in the past, potting soil, just like a lot of other aspects of gardening, has improved in quality and improved in drainage, or nutrition packets, just overall, even specialties. So we have specialty soil sometimes for certain plants. But in our parents' generation and our grandparents' generation, potting soil was still kind of in the early stages of being created. There weren't a lot of formulas out there, and sometimes it was just a little bit gross. It was like sawdust and reused materials that weren't necessarily premium materials. So we were always taught in the past to like put pebbles or break up pottery and put it in the bottom of your container so it drains better. We don't have to do any of that anymore. If your container has drain holes in the bottom of it, then put your soil all the way in the pot and all the way to the bottom. That's what this pot has. Because we want to grow something like a tree and it's going to be in this container for several years, we're not going to like try to reduce the amount of soil we put in. I know people all the time are like, do I have to fill this whole pot with soil? Well, not if you're just going to grow like an annual, some one season's worth of flowers, maybe some, veggies or whatever, like lettuce, little things. But if you want to grow anything more permanent, anything large, really the more soil you put in the pot, the easier it is by summertime to keep it watered. And that's somewhere to hold the nutrition, not to mention if you have height, if the pot doesn't have enough weight to it, in a like windy day, if it goes dry at all, it'll blow over and possibly even break. So that's a huge bummer as well. So with this one, like I said, soil all the way to the bottom. And now the fresh potting soil that we're adding is GMB potting soil. It's not compost. It's not soil building conditioner. It's not any of the type of soil that's meant to be put into the ground. Potting soil has lots of little particles that act as like spacers. And the spacers are what allow air and water to flow and roots to penetrate, while kind of counteracting the tendency of that soil to compact and squish up over time to become really hard. So that's why potting soil goes in pots, but not necessarily in the ground, and ground soil doesn't go in pots. So just bringing the level up enough on this one, because if you noticed, the first plant that I planted back in the container is the one that has the biggest roots, the deepest roots, because we have to get down to that level to put the plant in by pulling soil out or removing soil. Now I'm building it back up because the next group of plants that I'm planting all have a more shallow root system. And so we want to give them a foundation to sit on too. I have to make sure that I tuck soil in around all of the roots, and that means on the back side of this thriller, because there's just about 2 inches between the back of the edge of the pot and the back of this plant. So I'm not going to put any more plants back there, but I do want to make sure that there's all the dirt is filled in and not exposing roots there. So now our next layer, like I said, we've got blue angel and angel wings making our angel container. So we're going to put angel wings back in, and I'm going to do her, plant her kind of front and center. Let's see, we're looking at the center front. We'll do it right about there. So again, getting it out of the pot, just this, no need to loosen the roots on this one. It looks great. And I'll have to dig out a little bit of soil because this is the next largest container that we're planting. So just pull it away just enough so that the level of dirt is the same for the angel wings and the blue angel. Okay, and now I'm wondering, what do we think? I just think it's too much silver. I like the angel wings, but I'm not gonna put this lavender back today. We are gonna add some annuals, even though the blue angel or the angel wings is also an annual. I'm gonna add some annuals, and I think because it's St. Patrick's Day, I've got to add a purple shamrock. It's gonna look really pretty with these colors, but it may not be a permanent plant. So some of these are gonna stay in through the rest of the summer, hopefully go into fall, and in many cases last us through winter. But a few of the elements of this combination are intended to be enjoyed for 2-3 months, then switch them out with maybe some other plants that we will enjoy during the heat of the summer for another 2, 3, 4 months. So for, you know, not too much of an expense, you can kind of change the look and feel while maintaining kind of the foundation of the combo. So again, that shamrock's just going to be gorgeous in there. Then we have the rest of the combo that I've pulled together today, which are, again, summer annuals. This is tricolor fancy leaf geranium, and I just love using this plant. It does flower, but it's really more for the foliage. It combines really great with so many colors. I mean, the leaf has so many colors on it that you can really pull out a lot. We're gonna today combine it with this bright golden yellow Nemesia. Nemesia, this is fragrant. It's a spring blooming, kind of cool season annual that just is like airy and fun. This will keep blooming for us for another several months. And if by the heat of summer it's looking ragged or tired, we can either cut it back and give it a chance to reflush, or pull it out and put in something different. So these two together are going to give us that kind of cheery contrast with that steely blue that could be kind of cold. So we're going to warm it up with these nice warm colors. And again, this turquoise pot, these colors are going to play great off of that turquoise pot. The other seasonal element, and you'll just have to kind of see it to feel it, see it to see what I mean. But these are ranunculus, and they are hard to resist. They're like the ultimate like Easter or spring flower. And again, they are going to bloom for the next month or 6 weeks. They like the cool weather. They also give us that nice warm contrast with that steely blue. And they are probably going to get changed out as soon as they're done blooming. But ranunculus, how can you resist a ranunculus? And they come in all different colors, but again, I chose this orange because I think it's fun and plays off of our bright gold. Thriller here, those are my fillers basically. So tricolor geranium, the Nemesia, and then just kind of for extra seasonal fun, the purple shamrocks and the golden orange ranunculus. Spillers are another permanent element. So this is this is the newest member of the Jennies. This is Midnight Sun chocolate creeping Jenny. So there's golden creeping Jenny, green creeping Jenny, chocolate creeping Jenny, and now Midnight Sun creeping Jenny. So like I said, the Jennies, they've got great foliage colors. They're really good, just strict trailers. So they don't go out horizontally. They really drop down, pretty fast growing, and just easy care. And this Midnight Sun has, well, it's just going to become a little bit more prominent, I think, as the plant gets bigger, but it's got this chocolate leaf with a really kind of sharp green veining through the center of the leaf. And as it gets a little bit larger, we'll really kind of see that, that'll pop. So that's gonna spill over the edge of that turquoise container and give us a great contrast to the pot itself. And sometimes that's important to consider. If my pot was brown, I would probably not be able to get away with going on brown with the trailer. So we would go with a totally different color if it were a darker pot. But because this is a light colored pot, we can use this as a really fun contrast, not only with the thriller plant itself, but with the color of the container. And lastly, we're gonna figure out how to add back in this Ceanothus Diamond Heights, because it didn't do anything wrong. It looks great. It's going to add to our planting, pulling the golds of the Nemesia, the golden of our tricolor geranium, and it's about to bloom. So I think we can kind of tuck it off the back and, you know, call it an accent off the backside. So I'm going to, we can see again that it's just got gorgeous roots. They're all loose and ready to be put right back into the soil. Another maybe scoop of fertilizer on this upper level. Now, granular fertilizer like I'm adding is more long-term, so that's gonna feed for a good month or 6 weeks or so. So if you wanted to top off with something that was liquid, that's fine. But this kind of stuff we love to use because it's slow release and long feeding. So tucking our Diamond Heights in, I'm gonna say back here, I don't have quite enough soil, so now we gotta raise up the floor again. It's a pretty contrast over on this side. If you've watched these classes, normally I do a lot more talking and a lot less working, but hopefully, again, this is a fun change of pace. Now, building from kind of front to back, we've got our Nemesias. They're tall, they're billowy. And because, as I mentioned, this is a back to front view, or front to back view. So here, we'll do just a little bit of loosening of the soil for the Nemesia. Tuck this guy in. I like it kind of under the pine just a little bit so that it's peek out, and we know it will. Big pots like this use up quite a bit of soil, so I always love to start the season with, you know, a pretty good sized bag of potting soil. It never goes as long as I think it will, but you never want to be out of it, really. Okay. I'm symmetrical. My brain likes symmetry, but I'm always trying to be less symmetrical. I know that often people that do really creative designs don't have to abide by symmetry as much, but I do rely on it. So we're gonna match the kind of sides here, getting that Nemesia in. And next is our tricolor geranium. I chose this, as I mentioned, because it has so many colors, but I also want that nice big leaf. So I like the larger leaf contrast. That's also what the Senecio Angel's Wings gives us, is somewhere for our eyes to land that's not kind of fine or detailed or busy or flowers. It's just a nice target, nice landing spot for your eyes. So they will get a little bit taller as the season comes on, so we can put them towards the sides here and know that they're gonna get a little bit of height as they grow, but that's okay. And as you can see, I do kind of cram things a little bit. We're okay with stuffing our pots to a certain extent. It's what makes them look good and full. And because we've paid attention to their growth habits, a lot of them will get out of each other's way as they grow. Speaking of out of each other's way, yeah, okay. So we have to work on it a little bit for the early arranging to get everybody to play together. And now I'm gonna add just a tiny bit of soil over here. We can get some spiller action in between the angel's wings and the tricolor geranium right here. I've got a nice spot, and it doesn't seem like a big spot, but again, that's because it doesn't need a big spot. You're gonna spill over the edge instead of grow up into the other plants. So that allows us, again, more plants and less space. So there's our, what did I call it? Midnight sun. Yep, midnight sun. Lismachia, if you don't want to call it Jenny. I'm gonna get this guy over here. Just kind of move your other plants out of the way and coax it over the edge, and then it'll do what you want as it grows, because it really wants to go where it has space, right? Okay. Now, the front row is sort of the, like, change them out if we get tired of them or if they go out of bloom. So it makes it easy to sort of group them together as our feature. Wow, and these guys are rooty. Gotta work on getting them out of their pots. Look at all those roots in there. But I'm not like obsessing about these because, again, like I mentioned, they're sort of short-termers. You can do a little bit of loosening, but they're also in full bloom. So you disturb their roots too much and they may abort the flowers that they've got. So we just want to be careful or be gentle with them. But I am going to kind of shove them in here because I want them in. But like I said, they're not going to live here forever. So they can just, they can take the room that I give them. So I like that kind of center, well, center left while we're at it. Now, because I'm unsure about the shamrock and it likes a little bit of different, it wants to be a little bit drier than the rest of the planting. I might have to protect it in the, you know, what we have left for cold. It's been indoors or been in undercover. So guess what? I'm gonna pretend to plant it. And pretend to plant it means that everything else has come out of their pots, right? This guy I'm not even gonna take out of its pot, but I'm gonna bury the pot in the dirt with everything else. And when it's no longer St. Patrick's Day, like tomorrow, or whenever I feel like it, I can just like excavate, pull the pot out, and now I've got a little hole that's just perfect for putting in another more seasonal container plant or whatever. So anyways, I need to raise my soil again, just a tad. Make some room. Okay, so we're gonna just fit him in there for now. Oh, where do you fit? like that. And get our last ranunculate in there. Now, naturally, I'm going to finish off by scooping bits of soil. So it's more like taking my big shovel's worth of soil, but now I have to do little handfuls to fit in between the small root balls that are in there. So I'm gonna like scoop some in, push it down with my hands, and make sure that I'm tucking all of the dirt in between all of the different little pots that are sitting in here to ensure that all the roots are covered, that the soil ends up kind of level and uniform at the top of the pot. Then, because it's not gonna stay right here in this room, I'm gonna move it to its permanent location, and then I'm going to water it well to settle all of the soil and kind of settle everything in. And at that point, once it's watered, some of the soil may kind of have settled more, so I'm going to be ready to add just a little bit more soil if I see little bits of roots exposed or anything like that. So remember, again, it's extra full, but it's not all meant, we're having a party or it's Easter or we're celebrating spring. So we've thrown in some extra flowers that as the rest of the planting grows, those flowers may come out of bloom, be edited in general, and simply be in there as short-termers to make the planting look full and seasonal. And we'll repeat the fertilizing probably about every month or 6 weeks, a granular fertilizing. To get things kind of going, you can always top them off with a liquid fertilizer that we go with. We like our organic brands, the GMB all-purpose or the Bud and Bloom, High Bloom. Use whatever fertilizer that works best for you, and come into the garden center anytime soon. You will be seeing kind of change out of most of our mannequin plants. So the example containers that we have down our center aisle, giving you some combination ideas that should inspire you throughout the rest of the season. And thanks as always for watching. Everybody, happy gardening.